Hi, I am Jenny and welcome to FREEJOO, the global community of educators. Let me show you why as an educator you should make FREEJOO an important part of your teaching and learning practice. A community of teaching practice is important for any educator. On FREEJOO you will be able to access CollabEd, which is like LinkedIn but for educators. Here you will be able to connect and network with other educators from all around the world. You can build your own community of teaching practice and/or join one of the many other existing groups and learn and share ideas, lesson plans, etc. with each other. Then, for a more formalized approach to professional development, you can go to SkillEd, which is like Netflix for educators. Here, you will be able to access a wide range of courses designed by global experts that will help you to learn about new pedagogical, technical, and soft skills, all related to 21st century education and the future of work. There are more than 20 courses available for free, and for more advanced level courses, you can upgrade to the Silver membership plan for just $20 per year and get access to all courses designed by Academia. The courses are available in English and in several other Asian languages. And what's more, you will receive a free verifiable and tamper-proof digital certificate for each course that you complete. If you have upgraded your membership to the Silver, Gold, or Platinum plans, you also get access to DesignEd, which is like Canva for educators. Here you will find the easiest and fastest way to practice your own instructional design skills and build your own courses. We have pre-integrated several third-party edtech apps like Flipgrid, Canva, Mentimeter, Padlet, H5P, Zoom, etc. right into FREEJOO so you can make your courses engaging and fun for your own learners. As you can see, there is a lot you can do on FREEJOO as an educator. So what are you waiting for? Go to www.freejoo.com and get your very own free lifetime membership today. See you soon on FREEJOO.
Okay. Hi, welcome everybody. I'm glad to see that we're all together again. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all our friends and viewers all over the world. Welcome to AcadAsia's Webinar Wednesdays. We usually hold this every Wednesday, but last week we kind of took a little bit of a mini break because our friends, of course, in Philippines, we're preparing for their elections. I'm sure for our Filipino friends here, you know what I'm talking about. And of course, our friends in Indonesia, they were celebrating Ramadan and Idil Fitr. So happy Ramadan to you. So it was a busy week last week. So we kind of took a little bit of a break, but now we're starting up again and we're having our regular webinar Wednesdays. Just some friendly fireside chats, so sit back, please relax. I hope you have your cup of coffee or tea or favorite cool drink. I know in some parts of the world now it's summer, it's very warm. So please cool down and relax. And we'll just have a little chat about interesting topics about educators and learning and teaching, and to continue our lifelong learning mindset and approach. So I think today there might be some issues in the chat. We are checking to see that we should have allowed chat on the YouTube stream. If it's not working, it's okay. Oh, there. Okay, the live chat is back. That's great. Okay, so good to see people chatting in the streams. Hello and welcome everybody. Again, my name is Roy Platon. I am the co-founder and chief community officer, CCO of AcadAsia, based out of Singapore. We are a mission-driven edtech business, and we're here to empower educators everywhere. And for our series of Webinar Wednesdays today, we have a very interesting topic. This topic covers a lot of, I guess, relatable aspects, especially for my fellow kababayans, people from the Philippines. Change management. Okay, I think it's quite appropriate. We did not plan this exactly. It just happened. It so happened that the lineup of topics kind of aligned very well. So we're undergoing a huge political change. But of course, we'll be talking about change management in general, and of course, how it applies to education institutions. Okay, so when things kind of have to, progress, okay, whether it's about technologies, different processes, different people, different ideas, different ways of doing things, it will really affect how we perform, how we do our daily tasks, and how we go about our lives. So today we'll try to kind of touch upon this topic, um, examine some tools that we help us understand and implement changes more smoothly, and how to better accept some of these changes, especially in the school context. How do we handle it and manage the reactions and responses to change? Okay, so um, and that's probably one of the only constants that we have. Okay, in this world, everything changes, and it's just up to us to kind of adapt and roll with it, or to go on living our lives with it. Okay, so for our set of speakers today, I'm very proud to kind of share um, that my colleague and a good friend will be joining us to shed some light into it, because he's had a lot of experience in managing change. In fact, he graduated development economics with academic distinction, plus the Abbott Chancellor Award in San Beda University, and then he followed that up with his master's in education from Ateneo de Manila. And he's been an educator for quite a long time, close to 18 up to 20 years. I'm very familiar with various institutions, even taught the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program at one point. And prior to joining AcadAsia as our one of our colleagues, he was also the vice president and principal at a prestigious Philippine senior high school institution, iAcademy. So he knows a lot about change, especially in the senior high school level. And in 2019, he also won the Education Leadership Award at the World Education Congress Global Awards 2019 in Mumbai, India. Okay, but of course, we're here in Manila now, and joining me is the PH Country Manager for AcadAsia, my friend, Mr. Jake Aragon. Jake?
Hi, Roy. Good afternoon to you and to all our teachers tuning in. Thank you for the very kind introduction, Roy. For me, really, the big idea behind change is change equals opportunity. No matter, Roy, how small or big the change is, we always have to view it as an opportunity, either for an individual or an institution to constantly look for ways to innovate or to improve itself. So I guess that's what my anchor will be for today. Our big idea: change equals opportunity.
That's great. And I love that, that mindset, right? It's a growth mindset. There are many ways to look at change, but seeing it as an opportunity is actually a very positive way of looking at it. And how do we use it to our advantage? So we have a bunch of guide questions here, so we'll go through that and we'll kind of chat and discuss. So everybody sit back and relax. Towards the end of the session, as per usual, we'll have a question and answer portion. So we'll invite our friends on the various chat platforms to share with us, so that they can actually, post their comments. So our friends from our teammates will be showing the link, so you can actually post your questions in the Mentimeter link. So we'll share that in a little bit. And of course, as always, this is an accompanying webinar live session that comes with an online course. So if you would like to earn a certificate for being with us on this course, we'll tell you the instructions on how to kind of enroll in the course on FREEJOO, our platform, and look for the course Change Management and enroll. Finish that course, and after you complete it, you'll get your certificate for this session. And as a special note, this is a premium course, so you will need to have a silver membership and above, okay, to access the course. But later, I'll give you the instructions how to access, because this change management topic is very timely, especially for all our education managers there. If you're heading the school, or the owners of the school, or you're part of the management team, this is a helpful framework that can use for change management. And I think the course will be worthwhile. I'll show that to you towards the end. Pero for now, kwentuhan muna tayo. Let's kind of chat a little bit and discuss. Okay, so Jake, we'll lean on a lot of your experience. And I know at the start of the program, you were saying, you're sharing to me before we went on air, you have a lot of stories to share regarding change. And I'd be very interested to hear about that. I have my own, so we'll kind of just bounce off each other and just see how we can talk about it. So, as we're talking about change management, especially in the school setting, it's about embracing different perspectives. Okay, so we have different points of view. Of course, we're human beings. We always have different ideas about change. But in particular, whether we like it or not, change is going to happen. Okay, so right now we just want to look having some insights on how to understand and manage change better, and how we can become a force for positive progress and development. So first off, I think I'd like to ask you, Jake, for our first set of questions. So when we talk about change in particular, especially when it comes to institutions like the academe or in education in particular, because change, we can have our own personal changes in our lives. So our teachers who are joining us here and educators who are upskilling, that is a gradual change so we become better educators. And that's fantastic, right? That is part of the lifelong learning mindset. But when we talk about institutions,
Hmm.
okay, the schools and the academic enterprises that we're in, what does that change look like? And what do we mean when we say we want to manage change in bigger organizations like this?
Right, right. I was reflecting very, very thoughtfully about this, and when I was thinking about it, I found my reflection dating back to the first year I taught, and that was in the year 2004, Roy.
Mm,
And I remember at the time, we still actually used Manila paper uh,
mm,
in classes where we would take hours writing the key concepts and lessons on Manila paper, have several of them, and actually post them on blackboards for
mm,
students to copy, or for us teachers to refer to when we conduct the lessons. And then, of course, eventually we had the TV set in the classroom that was aided with PowerPoint and a computer. But I also very clearly remember the times when we actually brought a 3.5-inch floppy disk into the classroom, right? So that I would put it in our very big CPU inside, where we would open up our files, whether they were PowerPoint files or presentations or Word documents, and show it to the kids in the room. And then that eventually became a CD, and then a USB, and then eventually it became all cloud based. I also remember very much having to check attendance using a sheet of paper with the class list there, and a roll call would take place every day during class, and then eventually it became part of the LMS that was used in the room, or a QR code that kids simply had to scan before they entered the room, and their attendance would automatically be recorded on the server of the school. So those are changes, Roy, that I considered micro in level, meaning at the at the very simple and practical work that the teacher had to do over the years at a very fast pace. Many things changed. But at the same time, I also remember the institutional changes that I also experienced in the school I was with back in 2004. I remember our school director. He was a priest, but was very dynamic, very progressive, very forward thinking. At that time, he introduced the idea of a one-to-one program, Roy, and teachers in attendance. What happened at that time was the priest required each student to have a gadget in class, whether it was a laptop or a
mm,
tablet. And that was in the year 2007. At the time, that was surprising to many, of course, because of the cost that entailed, but also because of the readiness that the teachers, the schools, the parents had, or the lack of it, right, when it came to introducing that kind of policy. I also remember at that time, our school had also introduced the idea of international travels at that time to further enrich the experiences of the students. Some teachers embraced it immediately, supported the idea, but we also had a lot of parents and students, who had a lot of reservations. And those
mm,
changes I saw, Roy, were macro in level, right? So there were micro and macro level changes that were introduced. And in observing the kinds of changes that took place at the time, I would say that they weren't easy, they weren't overnight transformations that took place. They took time. But at the end of the day, Roy, those changes all ended up becoming defining qualities or features of the school that sort of put the school above the rest and made it show to the parents and to the students what value added they have in terms of those innovations, in terms of those changes that they introduced. So
Yeah, that's
that's my experience with that, right? Yeah.
yeah, that's super interesting, right? I like the way you described it as micro and macro. So in the micro changes, just little things in your own individual work sphere.
Right.
I hope a lot of our teachers and audience still remember what a 3.5-inch floppy disk is. They probably don't know what that is anymore, but
Right.
just think about it as a really flat and much bigger USB drive that had much less memory. But
Mhm.
okay, that was like the micro changes, and then the macro changes, as you said, right? um, Having the kids or the students actually have devices to scan their attendance. That's quite innovative. That's probably
Mhm.
one of the few times I've heard such a high tech way of checking attendance, right? And then of course going on learning trips, excursions, and outdoor trips, other countries. And that's really really interesting because it shows how far we've come in terms of like the education experience from the four walls of the classroom to other locations outside of the classroom, and now even to hybrid. And in fact, I just want to do a shout out to all our people posting in the chat. I want to say hi to Isaiah Kiangwi from Kenya. Hi, you're joining us on Facebook. Hi, nice to see you. And of course, our friends from the Philippines, Bulacan, Lucena, Oriental Mindoro. Hello to all of you. And of course, we have Kate from Singapore as well. Hi and welcome to the program. So, touching on these micro and macro changes, and you mentioned like sometimes, it's usually like welcome. It's like, wow, I get on a free trip and I can see something new. But sometimes the parents would kind of have resistance. Is my child going to be safe if they're going to go out of the school campus? I want to share, I guess, to our audience, an introduction video on some ideas that we have on change management, because sometimes when change happens, and especially if it's a change that we're not that comfortable with, we have this a different kind of mindset or approach, and it might be relevant for our audience and our viewers to kind of watch this. So this is called the monkey step ladder experiment. We posted that on Colab Ed on our FreeJoo platform. So if you've seen that on our timeline and our feed, you will see that have seen this video already. But for the benefit of our audience, it's really quick. It's only 1 minute. Maybe we can share that video on the monkey and step ladder experiment. Okay, let's air it now.
On the ladder, the other monkeys in the room were sprayed with cold.
Okay, we'll start from the top. Let's just rewind and then post it again.
A scientist placed 4 monkeys in a room with a stepladder upon which there was a bunch of bananas. Whenever a monkey went to climb the ladder, the other monkeys in the room were sprayed with cold water. After a while, each time a monkey went for the bananas, the others would attack it to prevent it from doing so. The monkeys learnt to never climb the ladder. But then, one of the monkeys was removed, and a new monkey wearing a raincoat was introduced. Naturally, this monkey went for the bananas, and it was customarily attacked and prevented from doing so by the others. This new monkey learnt not to climb the ladder. So when another monkey was substituted in and made for the bananas, all the others attacked it, including the one in the raincoat, despite the fact that it had never been sprayed with cold water. A third monkey was substituted in, and then a fourth final monkey. And still, whenever a monkey tried to climb the ladder, the others would prevent it from doing so, even though none of them had ever been sprayed with the cold water. When asked why this was, one monkey said, "That's just the way it is."
Okay. Yeah, so thanks to this animation from Phil Hardy, and of course Art of Brilliance for that video. Very interesting perspective, right? Because sometimes when you think about change, and usually when we talk about institutions and we see the things are the way they are because that's just the way it is, right? And some of us, let's say we join a new school, or if we enroll in a new campus, new friends, or like we try to learn how things are done in that place, in that institution, or how things are done in this organization. The usual reaction is, this is just how things have been. And that experiment was interesting because it just showed, in terms of behavior, sometimes we're not even sure why that is, but it's just propagated and institutionalized as that's just the way it is, and it's very difficult to change. So that illustrates some of the challenges when we're trying to manage change, especially when something new is trying to be presented, right? So we have even some initial questions here in the chat, but we'll get to those later. But it's quite challenging, right? In that context. Jake, do you have any thoughts on this? It is what it is because it's just the way it is.
Right. Because sometimes, Roy, people are just afraid to say things about things that have been the way they are for a very long time, or to bring out into the open their ideas or their thoughts on how things can be improved, or because perhaps the culture in an institution does not allow for that kind of conversation or dialogue or discussion. So people who would be presented with an opportunity to change or to opportunity to innovate will not grab or seize that opportunity. What I've realized, right, in the many years that I've been working in educational institutions, really, is that it's not the changes that do you in, right? It's the transitions. We according to William Bridges, an expert on change management, change is not the same as transition. Change is situational. This could be the new policy, the new site, the new rule, the new team, the new roles. But transition is the psychological process people go through to come to terms with the new situation. And so we see that change is external, but that transition is internal. And unless transition occurs, change will not work. It won't fly. So new arrangements must clearly be understood if we are to be ready for change. So school administrators have to be able to manage that type of psychological process, right? Every time something new is introduced, every time a new policy or a new setup is brought into the table for teachers to follow, or for any new practice to be implemented in a school. And usually that takes a while. Because you have to deal with so many beliefs and perceptions and orientations and convincing. And as the school head or leader, you have to do a lot of selling as well to people so that they would also champion your cause.
Yeah, I you shared a lot of interesting nuggets there. I just want to break it down a little bit. I think at the start you were mentioning that, the assumption was that a change was being introduced. It's an external thing. We can concretize this later with an example, but it's something being introduced to the community or to the institution, but the assumption is it was always for an improvement. Right. So when we talk about that, typically we think that change is supposed to bring about improvement. That's the start of it is, why are we changing? Right. That's the first question that we have to ask is, what is the purpose of any change you want to introduce? Let's say moving from floppy disks to USB drives, right? Moving from inside classroom, just using your examples, using from inside classroom instruction to let's go out on a field trip,
or online,
right? Or go online, right? So let's say from just in-class learning to hybrid learning. So when we introduce changes, the assumption is always to improve, right? And that's usually for the purpose. However, it's improve learning outcomes, something more efficient. Let's say more storage space in terms of information or data, faster way of getting attendance. So there's usually, when we introduce a change, there should be some sort of purpose as to why we're changing. And then you mentioned now, then what is the reaction of people in terms of the internal transition that is required by the people? Let's say you're introducing something new, then in the transition phase or the transition aspect of it internally, what do the different stakeholders, people involved, who is affected? Is it the students, the parents, the admin, the teachers themselves, or everybody, even the
Right.
non-academic staff, the support staff? How
Mm.
is this change going to affect all these
Right.
stakeholders? And we have, a lot of common reactions, right? So sometimes, as you've seen in the monkey video, like there's resistance,
Mm.
there's anger,
Mm.
sometimes there's even denial of the change, and then some people are indifferent to change, and
Mm.
then you have maybe the other aspect is if the change is, as you were mentioning, if it's properly communicated or
Mm.
sold, or you get people's buy-in to that change, then there's acceptance, right?
Right.
So, very interesting: denial,
Yeah.
resistance, anger, indifference, acceptance. Okay, so it
Right.
might be the phases of accepting some changes we have here now, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, you
Yeah.
have any war stories to share
Yeah, like
about these themes?
right, Roy. Similar to when here in the Philippines, K to 12 was rolled out, so
Ah,
that meant
yes.
adding 2 more years of schooling in basic education.
Yes.
But initially was not received well by parents because clearly that entailed more cost on the part of the parents and
Mm,
an additional 2 more years of studying where in our previous experience, after fourth year high school, students immediately jump to college. But here, government showed that you have to go through another 2 years of schooling. We were trying our best at the time, I remember, because I had also set up a senior high school at the time,
mm,
not just to promote the school, but basically to explain the benefits of going through a senior high school education, right?
mm.
So we
So
had to
that's the purpose of the change,
right,
right? So,
exactly, right. But it was so vague at the time, Roy. It was
mm,
untested, at least in the Philippines at the time.
mm,
And so we had to go around, talk to stakeholders such as parents, and of course the students, not just about the school and the offerings that we had at that time, but the very basic idea of a senior high school education and how it would benefit them later on. But that was only one part of the equation, Roy, reaching out to students and to parents. We
mm,
also had to deal with, the transition that, let's say, the Department of Education had to put in place because the senior high schools also had to be managed. The teachers, remember at the time we had college professors from the tertiary level or from universities who were
mm,
asked to teach in the senior high school. That also entailed a completely different approach. And so we had a lot of
mm,
reactions to that as well. And also, the teachers who are in basic education also had to adjust their styles, right? Because it was sort of like a college approach that also had to be implemented. So it was really a messy,
mm,
at most times disorganized process. Many said that it was rushed or it was
mm,
haphazardly prepared. Uh, um, and so that was one example, of resistance, of even anger, right? That we
mm.
encountered with people directly or even indirectly affected by the transition to K to 12.
I think that, I guess with any kind of change, it's really never easy,
Right.
right? Because it precisely by the nature of it, you're doing something new, something
Mm.
that is not what you're used to
Right.
doing before, right? It's something very different. And that's why it's only natural that there is a resistance, especially if it's not clearly thought out or clearly communicated or implemented. But I think the benefits, maybe some of our viewers here in the chat, if you have had experience with the additional senior high school K to 12 system in your countries, has it kind of improved? I think the purpose of it at that time was you know, to have more training and
Right.
better education preparation for our
Mm.
students,
Mm.
as they go through even up to the senior high school level, even before they had gone on to college. I think if it was based on a US system,
Mm.
you could actually have the skills already by the time you graduate senior high school to actually find work, right?
Mm.
Whatever that kind of work may be at the high school level or senior high school level. And then you had the option aside from going straight to work, is then I could go for further studies to go to university, right?
Right.
But at least on the additional 2 years that you're adding, they
Mm.
would have more or less been more prepared for society to
Right.
kind of contribute productively, as whether employees or starting their own companies, what have you, or doing
Mm.
anything else, or maybe going to work a little bit first and then going to college afterwards. So many ways to go about it, but I think the purpose was to just have more preparation time for the students, and that was met with different reactions, right?
Right.
So our college teachers prepared to kind of adjust it for that level of senior high school. Our basic ed teachers ready to kind of have a more college approach. So
Mm.
it's really a lot of these changes. And note here that there's so many stakeholders, and like with anything, you know, when we accept, then we just adapt. And
Mm.
sometimes it's not the cleanest, it's not the prettiest thing. It can be really ugly, but I think we push forward. And I think what I'm seeing, even though change requires such, you have at least a bit more exposure, and a bit, the levels of students that are coming out now have at least more experience in terms of that kind of level of almost college like training.
Right. Right. Absolutely, Roy. And
Yeah.
also, the transitions or changes that we encounter. You're right in saying that the purpose has to be very clear. So when
Mhm.
we're communicating a new policy or a new system or a new direction in mind, it has to be totally clear. But what leaders also have to recognize is the need for the staff or for the teachers or all the stakeholders to recognize that the transition also has to start with an ending. What does that mean? It's paradoxical but true, Roy. Meaning, um, it has to come to a point when people affected by the change have to let go of things that have been in place and have to move on forward with the new directives or the new policies. So, what does that letting go entail? So, think of, let's say, a big change in your life when you're moving to a new city, a new job, or a school, or you've taken a new role at the company. There is a moment when you let go of your old colleagues, you let go of the comfort,
Mm.
right? You let go of the usual practices and habits that you have. And according to
Mm.
experts, that's what's called the neutral zone, right? And it's very crucial. It's very critical to be able to manage that point of being in the neutral zone so well. So once someone understands the transition begins with letting go of something, the first step to transition management is taken well. The changes happen very fast, but the psychological transition that happens takes place much more slowly. So people encounter an emotional wilderness of some sort, Roy, as they go
Mm.
through it, right? But it's important that individuals recognize themselves to be in this neutral zone, and if they rush change, confusion will be experienced, and many times people feel inadequate, which sometimes lead to turnover rates getting higher and higher in organizations that also change
Mm.
rapidly, right?
Mm.
So, what are we saying here? Every step of the way, every stage or level that individuals go through, management should be able to look into each step and see how each one is sort of managing or handling these. Otherwise, your approach to the transition might be very problematic or might lead to more issues later on.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense, right? But also, thing I want to touch upon is, um, while there are transitions also happening, and just being able to communicate it properly, it's important that the stakeholders and the people involved have buy-in, and it might take a bit more
Mhm.
time to kind of get them in, but eventually they have to,
Right.
right? So I think one of the techniques that in presenting a meaningful change, and let's try to be a little bit more concrete here. let's
Mhm.
try let's try describing, let's say, the transition, let's say, from in classroom to hybrid learning, or to using online technology tools, right? Exactly what Acad Asia is all about, and we have experienced collectively all our friends now here in the audience, in your own education institutions since the beginning of the pandemic, and now we're kind of hopefully winding down. Hopefully we don't see any new variants, but in preparation of that, for that, we should also still be ready for
Right.
alternative ways of delivering our lessons and our courses and syllabi, in case that we need to kind of move towards more online methodology. So even that change, all right. So like, we have a concept in terms of, let's say, you describe the purpose. It's
Mm.
important in terms of, let's say, so what is the benefit of doing things online? I think
Mm.
one clear benefit is you are not limited to disasters, natural disasters, let's say typhoons or earthquakes, pandemics, war or terrorism. If the school you're going to gets bombed, all
Mm.
right, while it's tragic and we hope that never happens, at least the students are able to continue their learning, even though it's the school from home or online learning type format, right? So for the students, what we're trying to see is per stakeholder, for the teachers, what happens to them, for the administration and the school owners, what happens to them. So in the change process, one of the things we identify as well is what's in it for me. Or while we have a purpose of this change and we're saying why it's happening, then as you were mentioning, then what's in it for the different stakeholders, and
Mm.
how do we kind of present this so that there's also more acceptance,
Right.
less resistance, because then there's something good
Mhm.
for everybody. So what's in it for the participants of this change? What's in it
Right.
for them?
Yeah, Roy. Actually, when we transitioned to online learning and teaching
Yeah.
in March 2020, right?
Yes.
And I was going back through the things that had to be done in our school at the time. I could summarize the steps that I took into 5 P's. First was purpose, like you said, Roy.
Purpose.
Very clear, right? Why are we doing this? Why do we have to continue teaching despite the pandemic at the time? And what are our end goals? It is, of course, to continue the delivery of instruction at the highest quality possible and still be able to continue on with the education of the student. Second is picture. I think that was crucial, Roy. I had to paint a picture.
You had
To
to paint. You had to literally paint.
I had to literally draw or choose a picture online, right?
Okay. Okay.
Would help people visualize what it is that they're about to experience. So it has to be visual. It had to be visual so that they could see themselves in the scenario, that they
Okay.
could
Okay.
situate themselves in that kind of position. And now more than ever, as we are living in a very volatile and uncertain world, we don't know when the next pandemic will strike us. We don't know when the next war might happen. And what we've learned in the past 2 years when it comes to online learning and teaching, adopting hybrid flexible models, will definitely be able to address these situations, these different in terms of circumstances or context that we experience. So that has to be something very clearly articulated or shared with the stakeholders. So your purpose, and then the picture, and third is people in the team. You'll have your champions, you'll have your promoters, but you'll also have people who will resist change. And my strategy was always simple and has always been simple. Choose a few, whether formal or informal leaders. When we say formal leaders, these are the ones who have position, right? The administrators. And the informal leaders, those who are in the faculty, who also have a strong voice, right? Able to champion the change. So slowly but surely, they'll reach out to even those who are very resistant, those who are very difficult to convince about the things that we want to do. We have to work very closely with these people. And then fourth, of course, is a plan. Now, at the time, and even now, I'm very impressed at the different plans, online hybrid learning transition plans that schools have. And the moment you have this kind of plan or strategy and you show it to your staff and to your students and parents, it's easier to win them over your side, and to be convinced that whatever it is that you'll be doing for the coming school years will be something that will be most useful and relevant to the kids and to the teachers. And finally, in accordance to the plan, Roy, processes and practices. Of course, a plan is just a written document, but the school head must be able, to apply and implement very consistently what these processes and practices are. So if we're asking what's in it for me, what's in it for the students, the teachers, it's again the responsibility of the heads, of the teachers, to be able to show and communicate clearly your purpose, the picture, the people who will work with them to achieve the goals, to lay out the plan, and of course to implement the plan using sound practices and processes.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to recap those 5 P's, thanks for that acronym. So you're looking at purpose, picture, people, practices, and processes. Plans, and then practices and processes, right? So you need those components, those 5 P's, so that you can actually introduce and implement change successfully, right? And I can just apply it again to online or hybrid learning models. Obviously the purpose is there so that you can continue education, whether you're in classroom or even online, to allow the continuing education and development of the learners, whether they're young learners or adult learners. And then what's in it for the different stakeholders? I guess the students can continue learning. They can learn in the virtual area. They can learn at their own pace and time as well, not just during classroom hours. For the parents, they're getting the most for the education they're investing in for their students because it's continuing also online. For the teachers, and this is what we've been advocating at Acad Asia, is you actually being able to be more efficient in delivering learning outcomes and education to your students, not having to always just lecture all the time again and again in the classroom. But if you have the modules already online, you can have the learners just review them. Then in the face-to-face time, the video time can just be more assessment and finding out if the students actually comprehended or where they had challenges with, which I think is a much more creative and much more useful, beneficial use of the time of the teacher, because they've mastered the subject matter already. Now they're just helping the learners learn it better, and they don't have to repeat whatever's in the textbook or in the online manual. You go read it, you go watch it, understand, answer the assessment, and when we come to class, what did you learn? How are you doing, right? So that's the benefit to the teacher. That's what's in it for them. It's a different, more proactive approach to learning. And then, of course, the institutions themselves, education continues, right?
Exactly.
Despite all these challenges, you can offer the best and highest quality learning for your learners and students. Teachers are teaching more effectively. They're spending less time on administrative work because they're able to deliver the learning more effectively. And you can continue with enrollments and people coming in because the education continues. So I think there are a lot of benefits. But as you said, it has to be managed properly. It has to be presented properly, and that's what the change management skill and framework is, quite important to tackle. Yeah. So in your experience, Jake, I guess moving on, there are a lot of questions now. We'll try to kind of squeeze in the time so that we can have more questions. I just want to say hi to our friends again. We'll take a short shout out to our friends that we have. Some friends from Vietnam. Tiling Nguyen, hello from Vietnam. And of course, we have our friends I know we have someone from Bangkok. I saw your name here, sir. Hello from Thailand. Welcome to the session. And of course, to all our friends as well, welcome to Acad Asia and our webinar Wednesday today, Change Management, Embracing New Perspectives, especially for education frameworks and settings. Okay, so it's all nice and great, right? Theoretically, it's fantastic, but I'm sure in reality, it's been super hard, right, and super challenging. Any stories you can share, Jake, in terms of particularly the common challenges or pitfalls when change is not accepted, when change does not happen, when it's not properly managed, and how is it still possible to recover and to adjust even if change is becoming more difficult to implement that
Mm.
as it should be? I mean, any particular story that stands out to you that, we had a hard time changing, but we did
Right.
this, and then we were able to push through.
Right. Yeah, yeah, Roy. I'll share my experience again back in 2016 when I had set up our senior high school. And
Mm.
in the senior high school that I was the principal of, I was looking at the course offerings that we had, and we offered specialized programs in animation, multimedia arts, fashion design, software development. And the first thing that came to my mind, and to my administrators at the time, was that these are strands or tracks that are very popular, but will be very hard to assess in terms of student learning or achievement, because you simply could not measure learning of the students under these tracks enrolled in these programs through
Mm.
paper and pen tests, right? So because
Mm.
it was nonsense to do it that way, that you'd have a multiple choice test for a student who's aspiring to be a fashion designer, or
Mm.
a budding multimedia artist. You would give him an essay, her
Mm.
what again, a multiple choice test to be able to assess what she learned, how to use Adobe Photoshop or InDesign and all those things, right? So I said, let's explore and see what will be the best approach to take. And I came across project-based learning when I was in grad school at the time,
Mhm.
even before that. And I said, this is absolutely the perfect fit
Yes.
for your senior high school program. So what happened? In a nutshell, instead of paper and pen exams at the end of each semester, the students had to work in groups to create a project and present them to a panel of experts at the end, much like a baby thesis or defense at the end of each
Mm.
step. So
Mm.
they were guided, of course, by the teachers. So they had to engage the last few months with each other in coming up with a project. For example, I remember our software engineering students. The challenge was, how do you solve problem in Makati? Because the school was based in Makati.
Like in the city where the school is in.
Right,
So when
because
you're
that's where
saying project-based learning, you associate it with a real-world scenario that the
within the
students
unit.
to solve as a project.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
And so what they had to do was they had to go to the traffic authority, Roy,
Yeah.
understand the simple engineering or algorithm that the traffic lights observe when they
Okay.
switch from red to green and so on, right? And also studied the routes in that
Hmm.
certain part of the city. And so they took a deep dive into all of that, used their knowledge of programming using Python to come up with an app, Roy, to
Hmm.
help solve some of those issues. And at the end, they even presented to local officials of the city. And so that
Hmm.
was very enriching. That was very different from the kinds of projects that they did before. That was challenging, Roy, because at first parents didn't want their kids to be going out of campus. They
Hmm.
felt
Okay.
that the kids would not be assessed properly. Their tests would not be measured, reliably.
Yeah, so
Given
I just wanna touch on this because you mentioned like you're looking at the challenges. The change is the way you're assessing the students, right?
right,
From the paper and pen
right,
typical test to a more project-based,
yes,
output-based kind of
right,
assessment.
right,
And
right,
and with parents, like even some of the parents, they are not familiar with this new assessment method. So aside from the teachers, being convinced that this assessment method is the way to go, you also need to kind of present it to the parents to show them that, right, this is the way we can assess the learning of the
right,
students.
right. And then that's exactly what we did, Roy. We invited them to the panel
Mm,
exhibits, to the
okay.
presentations later.
Okay.
And we even gave them the chance to ask questions to their kids about the projects that they were presenting.
Oh,
and
okay.
and they were very impressed, and that sort of sold the whole idea to them.
Yeah,
Maybe it
yeah.
took 2 semesters to get the
Okay.
parents works, and the students fully on board. But even to this day, after 5 years, it's the approach of teaching and learning that's being implemented in the school.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a great example because what happens is sometimes some effective changes they don't happen overnight. It really takes time, and even let's say from an Acad Asia perspective, when we did conducted our introduction to online teaching and creating your first online course trainings in the beginning of 2020, we're only really seeing the fruits of that a semester, 2 or 3 semesters afterwards. So we have some of our training clients coming back and saying, okay, I think we need a next round of training because we've seen how hybrid learning works.
right.
We've seen how we can implement it well. Now we can upskill further.
Mhm.
So totally agree with your example of getting people to try it out and see.
Mhm.
And I think even on the parent side, it's refreshing to like, okay, then I'll ask my students, okay, how did you do? And
Right.
oh, okay, looks like my son or daughter learned something. So
Right.
and
Exactly.
and it's not the typical pen and paper report
Right.
card type of assessment.
Yeah. And later on, I found out, Roy, that many of the parents who were part of ad agencies or who own
Hmm.
studios, were just using their kids to make
Okay.
their collaterals and designs for them, or hired their kids out, right? And that's fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just goes to show that even the extra 2 years of schooling, then the young
Right.
people are more productive. They can actually output something that can be used right in
Right.
industry or in society, which is really fantastic. Okay, so there are a lot of questions in the chat. I got a bunch of them. We'll just try to wrap up this discussion and we'll go to the chat questions immediately. So given that, okay, we've seen kind of both sides, there when people are resistant to change, the challenges, it doesn't happen, and things are confusing. You've also seen how it can benefit, positive ways of approaching a change approach, and all the stakeholders and all the 5 P's needed to kind of implement it, right? So maybe we can wrap up this discussion with what kind of benefits
Hmm.
you've seen when change is successfully managed and well implemented. Like how can we present to the various stakeholders that this effort, it's not easy, but it was all worthwhile? And in organizations in particular, and this is taking up in the course, I encourage
Hmm.
everybody to sign up for the course. Building resiliency and flexibility. All right, the concepts are resiliency and flexibility in our teams and organizations. And why is resiliency and flexibility important when you're talking about change?
Hmm. Hmm. Right. Roy, more than ever, we are in a position to really drive the idea or practice of resiliency and flexibility in teams and organization, because again of the very uncertain landscape
Mm,
that we are in now. When we talk about resiliency, there are skills that are also involved there. Many of these you will also find on our Acadesia platform, right? But it's also interesting to note how, when we talk about resilience and flexibility, we're not just targeting teachers, but even the students. So that
mm,
when they go through their classes, again, they're not just learning the lessons that are in the curriculum or in the syllabi, but the teachers or the school are also purposefully injecting experiences, student learning experiences that will help them become resilient or flexible. For example, when they do group work, it's always a frustrating experience, especially for those who are very good leaders, because he or she sees free riders in the group. Uh,
mm.
right, but once you're able to talk about how you can become a good teammate, how you can become a good group member, and how you can contribute your skills and talents to helping the team achieve the goal, somehow later on when they face bigger challenges in society or in their lives, these skills will demonstrate, these skills will show up. So we
Yeah,
have
in that particular example, Jake, our own CEO Neil has a perfect example of how do you handle, let's say, freeloaders in groups.
right.
So he has peer-to-peer assessment. he
Right.
makes
Exactly.
the he makes his fellow teammates, and the way that he does it is he would have a letter grade score A, B,
Yeah.
C, D, E, F,
Right.
and even if everybody performed well, you have to provide only one grade to your teammate, and
Right.
then you
Right.
have to discuss and defend, because then everybody has to give a rating. You can't give, let's say, straight A's or straight tens to everybody.
Mhm.
Why is she a 9? Why is she an 8 and 7?
Right.
And you have to kind of explain. So
Right.
even if everybody contributed well, but
Uh-huh.
who contributed the most, right?
Right.
So and then that's how you justify, and that gets the students thinking of, oh,
Yes.
okay, I have to kind of grade each other, and that's a way to avoid freeloaders. Free tip for everybody if you want to do a interesting assessment.
Right.
Okay, go
But
ahead,
that
continue.
entailed the teacher or the school putting these structures in place, right? So
Yeah,
it's by
making the
design again.
environment to allow those
Right. You just
things.
don't make them sit in a group, okay, work on this project.
Yeah,
There was
yeah,
that additional effort to make sure that assessment, again, was done peer to peer and that there was a system behind all of it.
yeah. Yes.
So yeah, that's a great example there. Mhm. For us to see change to be successful or the benefits of change, again, maybe there are quick wins that we see in terms of either the skills or competencies of the students or the teachers in this case, but also we also have to recognize the benefits of the long game, Roy. when
Mm,
when when certain changes implemented and then we see people championing the cause or contributing ideas to the projects or to the innovations of the school. If you see people wanting to get more involved with these different initiatives, somehow those are intangible benefits that are experienced or seen by the school, and those are things that we always welcome in institutions. But I guess it's also a matter of spotting them and being able to summarize how all these benefits are felt or experienced by the teachers, by the students, and by the school.
yeah, absolutely. And I guess as we become more used to changes, and they'll always happen, right? In fact, I'm sure, dear friends, fellow educators and teachers in the audience, like every semester there's a new program, there's a new syllabus, there's a new mandate from, let's say, government or from the head of the schools, the owners of the schools. Maybe we need to do more, let's say, international looking linkages, or more project based or experience skill based learnings. So change is really always going to be with us, and the more we get more comfortable with the framework of change, then the easier it is for us to transition and improve, the easier it is to get buy-in from stakeholders, and the more also that we can assess and see, did this change really work? And I want to just highlight the resiliency and the flexibility. Some, not all changes work for the better,
Right.
right? There are some changes that, oops, we made a mistake. Oops,
Mhm.
I think this did more harm than good,
Mhm.
right? And that's okay.
Right.
Even on an institutional level, we also need to give ourselves some flexibility in terms of, okay, we tried this program for maybe a couple of months to a semester. The outcomes were not as great as we thought it would be. Okay, we did not see, let's say, particular reactions. Let's say maybe it's a physical ed class, and try to have more sports, but some sports are
Mhm.
not as popular as others. Or even, like, speaking of sports, like in a basketball game, our friends from the Philippines, we love basketball like anything. The championship or playoff level teams, because they're able to adjust in the middle of the game,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? If you're trying to score a basket or do good defense against the opposing best player, people who have good change management skills can adapt mid game. They don't have to wait until the end of the game or the end of the playoffs. You already lost already. But the best championship teams are able to adapt mid game. That's exactly what change management is. We're getting used to that flexibility, that sometimes, okay, this play is not working. This
Mhm.
playbook is not working. Let's kind of shift and tweak it a little bit so that it can be better.
Mhm.
All right. Okay. So fantastic comments. I just want to shout out a lot of our comments here. I'm sure, I think it's being shown on the screen. More skill-based, theoretical rather than theoretical-based. Thank you, Miss Cheng. And then, of course, we have another comment here. doing some sort of analysis tools to look at the benefits, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So, great insights from our audience. Let's jump into the questions. I want to tackle a couple of them right now. Let me look at a couple of these. Okay, so there's one kind of related question. We already touched upon this, and maybe Jake, you can chime in. This question number 2 is: do you see the future of education as being a hybrid one?
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
this will be the mode or the model that we will have moving forward. It's the most responsive type of approach that will cater to different uh, learning styles. It can be contextualized to to suit the concerns and needs of students, and we will continue. I think teachers and institutions, not just in the Philippines but around the world, will continue developing more and more advanced models and strategies to deliver flexible hybrid lessons. I think there's no turning back. There's no going back to
Hmm.
the previous work.
Yeah, and all the more reason why we have to get more comfortable with change. It's not going to be easy at the start, but I think if anything, any of our training partners and participants from our early years, I think they're doing really well. I'm actually
Right.
quite proud of them that those who have undergone the Acadesia training programs are really adapting quite well to do slowly but surely a highly hybrid learning environment. They're using online tools better, online assessments more, and they're able to incorporate that even with real world physical assessments and grading metrics so that you can have a complete look at the semester or year level of the student. They're actually able to use both modalities, printed and online, in a really good way, and we're really happy to have been a part of that for your institutions. Thank you
Right.
very much for that.
And then, Roy, there have also been
Yeah.
a lot of success stories
Yes.
that we're seeing now from the experiences of schools conducting hybrid learning. And
Mm.
so we will continue to build on that. And I think there's just so many opportunities to innovate in that space, even for teachers, as you continue to develop skills and competencies to become better educators. And one of them, of course, is how we do it in Acadesia, right?
Mm.
Where all our learning and training for educators are done online. Mhm.
Absolutely. So that's related to some questions here. Like there's one about the style of education and teaching changing in the few years. Definitely going to be changing. Um, there's also a couple of questions here related there to, I guess, our dear teachers and other stakeholders. Their coping mechanisms towards change, right? Is it a challenge or an opportunity? That's a great question. And then as we kind of move towards, okay, so how do you cope with change? And if we have, let's say, these mechanisms to kind of adjust to these changes, how do we grow professionally, considering that sometimes there's limited interaction with students, right? And this is a great question here, because if some institutions are still not able to have their students come to class, so how are they able to kind of deliver this hybrid approach even with the limited interaction? So I guess the first one is, how do you cope with change, and then how do I uh, handle the limited interaction with students?
Right. In terms of coping with change, as fast as the changes take place, Roy, and to the teacher or administrator who asked this question, I think at this point, institutions are also recognizing the need to be able to give some elbow room also for teachers, Roy, to learn these innovations, these changes at at different levels or at different speed rates, right? So don't worry that you'll absolutely be left behind or that you'd feel inadequate, because based also on our interactions with our partners, we can see that the efforts to really equip educators, not just here in the Philippines, but all over the world, with the new skills and competencies needed are a lot and are very strong. So I think it's really just a matter of seeing how these plans are all coming together. But as Roy also mentioned earlier, we have to embrace it, right? Given these opportunities to change or to innovate, we have to be able to make the most out of these opportunities and open our minds and of course our hearts as well, to these kinds of changes that are before us. In terms of coping mechanisms, my strategy, Roy and dear teachers, is that I speak with fellow educators who
Mm.
are like-minded and who will always, give me perspective on things. There are times when you're teaching, you have a Zoom room, right, with 20 to
Mm.
30 students, and there are instances when you feel that as the teacher you're the only one speaking, and students are not really responsive. And sometimes those kinds of experiences, make you feel terrible at the end because you couldn't really tell if you're able to reach out to the students. But at the end of the day, what really helps is holding dialogues and conversations with teachers who are in the same place, who are experiencing the same kind of situation that I am in. And you know what? Always, I get new ideas, I get new perspectives on things. I'll learn new strategies by participating in webinars like this, hosted by Acadesia and other groups. You'll also get tips and strategies, and you're able to get a renewed source of energy or enthusiasm to do what you want to do. For me, that has been the most effective coping mechanism, to just talk about it and
Yes.
learn more and more about the practice.
Yeah, absolutely. You should take advantage of, your having your colleagues,
Right.
your fellow teachers, you kind of have friends at the workplace, kind of can just chat about anything, and just kind of bounce ideas off each other. Oh, I'm having a hard time with this tool. It's like it's not the
Yeah.
easiest. How have you done it? Or I have this student who's really not, let's say, raising their hand in the class.
Mhm. Mhm.
What can I do to kind of encourage them to participate? Maybe I'll change my recitation format. Maybe there's an art project,
Mhm.
they can submit something else, or they can do a video of themselves a la TikTok, and
Right.
try to share. So, and all these tips you can get just sometimes by talking to your fellow teachers, or of course our community. That's why you guys are
Mhm.
here. We're more than welcome to chat and message with you. If you just have some idea, hey, I thought about this, do you think this is good or not, please come and ask us. And our
Right.
academic team and all our friends from all over the world will be more than happy to reply. One last question from our audience, and this is a particularly challenging subject, but let's take it up anyway. So, what happens if, in embracing different perspectives that apply to educational regulatory agencies, okay, especially ministries of education and governments, not just in DEPA and Philippines, but ministries in Indonesia, Vietnam, what
Mhm.
have you? Sometimes they do not answer to the stakeholders in an obligatory context, right? Sometimes, if you want to involve stakeholders in change,
Mm.
um, it sometimes it feels like the government agencies themselves are kind of not listening. I mean, how do we propose changes to our friends in government?
No, actually, Roy and dear teachers, what we saw in the pandemic was that schools were given that room to be more flexible and creative with their
Hmm.
approaches, right? So,
Hmm.
the mode of schools at the time shifted from being merely compliant to being more creative, right?
And participative, right? And
Right, and
just yeah,
participative and consultative, even because we
yeah,
saw a
yeah.
lot of institutions listening to their students and to their stakeholders. There were many activities online that brought student sentiment to mind also, and schools
Hmm.
had to seriously consider that because schools gave in to some of those requests to give academic breaks, right, or
Hmm.
to allow more flexibility in terms of the submission of requirements and grading them and so on. So I hope the lessons learned during the pandemic will sort of
Mm.
carry over in terms of creativity, in terms of innovation, to regulatory agencies. Again, not just in the Philippines, but around the world, that can empower teachers and schools to be more creative, to be more dynamic, to be more progressive. Because clearly we saw the success stories behind some of these institutions that did so well, right? So
Mm.
it has to apply. It has to apply. And hopefully, well, we can just hope because we don't elect these leaders, right?
Mm.
They're appointed, right? Most of the time. But what we need to be able to be is one, strong voice to send that message, that impression to our regulatory agencies that, hey, when you gave us the chance to innovate and be flexible, we responded, we rose to the occasion, and we came up with programs that help continue the delivery of education to students.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, aside from just the successes, even the huge gaps.
Right.
I mean, it was so obvious. Like, even let's say if again, in the spirit of participation and talking to your fellow colleagues and teachers, it's the same around the world. We participate in global surveys on competencies in English, math, and science, right? And other key subject areas. And if there's an assessment test that's given, although it's limited in the sense that it's only a written test, it's not a full picture of the comprehension of learners, but it gives you an idea of where we rank in the world, right? So if we're kind of lagging behind, then that is a clear, sign that, I think we need to improve, because this is an impartial assessment comparing against
Mhm.
other countries. How are we doing in terms of the level of competencies of our learners for basic subjects, right?
Mhm.
One more tip, I guess, before we kind of wrap up again, is I would suggest, especially for regulatory agencies, if you're working with them, is what we do in preparing for change, and you'll
Mhm.
learn more about this in the course, is,
Mhm.
having pilot programs.
Right.
Like sometimes when you're planning your change, it can't be one go, this is it, do it or not do it. That is probably
Mhm.
100% a way for you to get it disapproved, and they
Mhm.
won't listen to you. All right.
Mhm.
So one way is to just have a case study or a pilot project. If you want this kind of change, we can pilot it in this kind of, communities, or this, let's say, this year level or this subject matter. Let's see how it goes. And if it does and it succeeds, then that's something that can be turned into a bigger scale of a project. So
Mhm.
try piloting some ideas, and then you can move forward with the bigger changes to propose to agency, and you can work together. In fact, they like that, because then they can see that, oh, we're piloting this with the school, and we'll see at the end of the semester. And who knows, that change might be carried on in a much larger scale, across many schools or across your country. So that's another tip for everybody if you'd like to try that out. Okay, so time runs so fast. Such an interesting topic, and now I'd like to kind of just show everybody how we can actually avail of the course that's connected to this webinar, so that you can get your certificates. Let me now share my screen so that I can kind of show you how we actually do this. So again, this series of webinars, in particular, the ones that we have up and coming, are part of our premium courses that we offer to our partners and friends on the platform. And if you are not yet on the platform, I encourage you to join. Uh, Very easy to sign up. So when you come to FREEJOO, just create your account, and there's several features here. So Skilled or Skill Ed is where you actually learn the courses. But here in Collab Ed, this is where our social media and our chatting and timeline is. So if you want to talk to fellow teachers, please come over, and we'll be happy to chat with you. We have here posted, of course, our monkey step ladder video. If you want to watch it to kind of show, okay, this is how we perceive change sometimes, and this is a thought starter, please come over and join us in our Collab Ed. And then if you go to, of course, our courses on Skill Ed, or Skilled, you will see, as part of, let's say, your free accounts, you start off with probably about 20 courses for free. But then if you sign up and upgrade to the silver membership, So again, very affordable, only 20 US dollars or about 1,000 pesos to sign up for 1 year already. That's not even 4 Starbucks coffees. Very affordable for 1 year. You can sign up and then you'll have access to more than 40 to about 60 plus professional development courses. In particular, accompanying today's webinar is our change management course. So you can sign up here. And once you, let's say, click on this, you enroll. And once you enroll and you get in, so we have our topics. So it's an 8-hour course. We have about 4 lesson topics here. And inside the course itself, just a sneak peek, you have a lot of modules here, but very, very helpful in terms of the framework for change management. Define your strategy, influences to change, identifying what's in it for me or for the team. How do you manage these change? How do you make it worthwhile? And of course, building for resiliency and flexibility. You can go through this course, complete it through the end, and at the end, you will earn your certificate of completion for this particular topic. And you can add that to your resume. It's on the blockchain, so no one can tamper with it. No one can change the name. So you will have officially a certificate of completion from AcadAsia regarding the change management course. Okay, so please sign up on the silver membership. How to do that? We can share those links on the screen. If you're a free member, there is a subscription plan for silver, only 20 US dollars, again, only 1,000 pesos or more or less. If you have a credit card, you can use this link. And we're showing that link, I guess, in the chat now, and we can forward that to you. Just contact us at support@freejoo.com if you want to learn how to subscribe to this. Or if you're in the Philippines in particular, we have a Google form. So please sign up here. You can pay using GCash or BPI, and you will have access to the silver membership that gets you access not only to change management, but even all the other professional development courses aside from change management in the platform. Okay, so aside from this, I'll just plug again, change management this week. Next week, we'll have our next topic, which is related to conflict resolution. Again, a premier management course available for silver members and up. And 2 weeks hence from here, there's also the Introduction to STEAM Education. This is a premier course. We'll have a special plan for this. We'll be posting that very soon. Please join this Intro to STEAM. And then, of course, we have our cyber safety course coming up in June. Okay, so if you sign up for our memberships, you will get access to the change management course and the conflict resolution course. Again, you can pay by credit card using this link, or you can pay via GCash or BPI using this Google form. All right. Okay, so that's our program for today. Thank you so much. I hope you finished your coffee or tea. I feel like having cake right now, actually. I want something sweet to re-energize. On behalf of AcadAsia, Jake, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. To all our friends from all over the world, thank you so much. Terima kasih, maraming salamat po. Kamungkap, kamungka. I have to brush up on my other Southeast Asian languages and other languages. Our friends from Africa, hello. Thank you for joining us. On behalf of AcadAsia, I'm Roy Paton, and see you again next week for our next webinar, Wednesday Fireside Chat. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Hi, I am Jenny and welcome to FREEJOO, the global community of educators. Let me show you why as an educator you should make FREEJOO an important part of your teaching and learning practice. A community of teaching practice is important for any educator. On FREEJOO you will be able to access CollabEd, which is like LinkedIn but for educators. Here you will be able to connect and network with other educators from all around the world. You can build your own community of teaching practice and/or join one of the many other existing groups and learn and share ideas, lesson plans, etc. with each other. Then, for a more formalized approach to professional development, you can go to SkillEd, which is like Netflix for educators. Here, you will be able to access a wide range of courses designed by global experts that will help you to learn about new pedagogical, technical, and soft skills, all related to 21st century education and the future of work. There are more than 20 courses available for free, and for more advanced level courses, you can upgrade to the silver membership plan for just $20 US, per year and get access to all courses designed by Academia. The courses are available in English and in several other Asian languages. And what's more, you will receive a free verifiable and tamper-proof digital certificate for each course that you complete. If you have upgraded your membership to the Silver, Gold, or Platinum plans, you also get access to DesignEd, which is like Canva for educators. Here you will find the easiest and fastest way to practice your own instructional design skills and build your own courses. We have pre-integrated several third-party edtech apps like Flipgrid, Canva, Mentimeter, Padlet, H5P, Zoom, etc. right into FREEJOO so you can make your courses engaging and fun for your own learners. As you can see, there is a lot you can do on FREEJOO as an educator. So what are you waiting for? Go to www.freejoo.com and get your very own free lifetime membership today. See you soon on FREEJOO.